It's the Fellowship of the Geek Show, a weekly podcast about comics, the comic book industry, and other geek pop culture. Music courtesy of Manny the Martyr. And now, on with the show! Hey everybody, it's the Fellowship of the Geeks podcast. My name is Thomas Chick, and joining me for this episode is Mike Marlowe.
Hey gang.
Les Webster.
Hello all.
And Liz Newman.
Hello everybody.
How are you guys doing?
Weird.
Okie doke.
Yeah.
Weird?
Weird.
Weird. It is weird. I agree. So, what's been going on in your corner of the galaxy? He asked knowingly.
Well, yeah, we kind of hinted at it there already. Yeah, this is not surprisingly been a weird week. I don't quite think we're all in lockdown yet, but hell, who knows? It's probably coming.
Yeah.
In whatever minuscule efforts to distract myself I can pull off. I mean, I've been essentially on YouTube quite a bit, watching videos on, mostly on D&D, just trying to sort of distract myself by getting myself in a gaming mindset. This is a tactic I used 25 years ago, and I'm kind of hoping it works to distract myself from reality a little bit. So, that sort of thing. Just trying not to think about stuff. I am in a pretty lucky situation where I am able to work from home and my kid's home from school, so I'm sort of having to, which is also good, which means, I mean, honestly, I probably would have had to work from home either way at that point, but they're getting things set up, I think, finally on basically online learning. So he's getting assignments every day from his teachers, and I was just reading something about how they're going to even have band rehearsals online this week.
Wow.
So that'll be fun, even though they've pretty much canceled the rest of the school year for anything extracurricular. UIL's been canceled. They had another contest they always do that has been canceled. They're basically just waiting to hear that all the rest of it has been canceled as well. But they still have to teach them stuff because otherwise things get ugly. But we're holding it together as best we can.
Yeah. I guess I'm trying to hold it together the best I can. Pandemic and anxiety problems don't go together.
I wouldn't have thought that would be a good combination. No.
I saw something I sent to my husband. It said, it took a pandemic on a global scale for you guys to, have the same anxiety level that I do. Welcome to the Thunderdome. But it's kind of like, yeah. And I guess what's kind of scaring me is because every bad thing that my mind can go to is happening. So it's kind of like, huh.
Oh, come on. Everything? Really?
Well, not everything.
Right.
I mean, we don't.
Okay,
yeah. we don't have guards in front of the house yet, But the governor did get orders for that, so it's kind of like, huh.
Oh, they can't do it in front of every house. Come on.
No, to me, I guess the scary part is we have National Guard moving into Dallas, and not for, not to lock everything down or that kind of thing. Right now they're saying it's for our medical hospitals and these tents that they're going to have to set up. Of course, we have to protect those areas and everything and people coming and going from them. But then he said, or as we're needed. And it was like, uh-oh. We don't want to hear that. We just don't want to hear that. But I'm in a lot of ladies groups, and they showed the big procession in California, all these tanks moving in and stuff. And it's like, wow, if that doesn't wake people up to realize you need to stay indoors, you need to wash your hands, you need to stay 6 feet away from people, I really don't know what's going to do it, So, but hey guys, we're nerds. We've been practicing for this all of our lives.
Right. Who among us doesn't have a contingency plan for the zombie apocalypse? Come on now.
Exactly.
This is not any different.
I even have my friends marked to the lowest that I could trip,
Mm-hmm.
Your zombie food. You borrowed my sweater and never gave it back.
You get tripped first.
Right. So... But, I will have to say that last week when we did our podcast, I think we were just starting to see the people starting to panic in the stores and that kind of thing. And I will say this week we are still seeing that, but there's been those little stories of, little kids buying toilet paper for old people or, going to their grandma's nursing home with the little signs and stuff. So it's little things like that that's slowly restoring my faith in humanity. But I just know on something really bad happen, I don't want to be around half the people I know.
You do not. That is correct.
So, I love you, but people went crazy. And, a part of me is also going, I hate to sound privileged here, but shouldn't you already kind of be prepared for like a 2-week stay? If something flood happened, we live in Texas, flood, tornado, something happens, And I think this shined a light to people that you're not prepared as you thought you were, Even as prepared as we were, there were still things we weren't prepared for, Especially when Phil is calling soap vanity item. No. Soap is not a vanity item.
Soap is a medical necessity now.
Yes. Well, he's talking other than hand soap, Like you get stuck in a house 2 weeks with a smelly wife and you'll want soap. So it's it is what it is, I guess, but it's just...
And if there's any consolation, it will end.
It will. It will. But with the attitudes that some people have right now, it's kind of like, God, but when will it end?
People are not good at seeing the future.
No.
People are not good at looking beyond their own noses for the most part. But
yep.
Even at the best of times.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it's easy at the best of times.
One of the more humorous clips I saw was a guy with spray sanitizer spraying 2 little cubes. What he was doing was sanitizing to jump the rail to get on the subway, not have to pay that way. And he spent time rubbing it down, then he planted his hands on it, leapt over, and walked toward the train.
Wow.
Wow.
To go get in a train car with 100 people.
Sure. Why not?
Yeah.
Well,
She'll
probably
get more
900
germs
people
from
now.
them than if he would have licked that pole.
Only to see if my tongue freezes to it.
Right. I'm just glad people are adapting to stay to hell 6 feet away from me.
About
That
time,
makes
right?
me wonder, how far does an antisocial person take this stretch? Is
Yeah.
it 12 feet?
Or how long? They're saying the third. I'm like, no, 2026 people. Stay the hell away from me.
I don't know. Let's ask Mike.
Wow.
As far as possible. I don't know that's changed, except that people are actually kind of, sort of, semi-complying now.
Right.
Yay.
But yeah.
thinking 6 feet may not be enough.
I've always thought 6 feet ain't enough.
I mean, if people are just now learning how to wash their hands, stay the hell away from me.
It's a little
Especially
scary.
with a toilet paper shortage, and you're just now learning how to wash your hands. Stay the hell away from me.
Right. Nobody trusts a toddler to wash his own hands now. Come on.
No.
These people are all toddlers in terms of washing their hands.
Just say, next week
20
is numbers.
seconds.
Yeah.
Sing the birthday song.
You know, with hand sanitizer and soaps and stuff that are going out of stock, it's like, people, you should have had this. I'm concerned. I've hugged some of you. You know.
You mentioned the birthday song, Les. See, we got to stay on brand here. It's not the birthday song. It's Space, the Final Frontier. These are the voices. You get all the way through that. You've been washing your hands plenty of time.
See, I always sing the first part of Black Parade. When I was a young boy. And by the time you make it back to after his father, you know, when I was a young boy, that's been 26 seconds. So you're good to go. A little bit more jazzier than the birthday song, you know.
Just a bit, yeah.
You know, it's funny. I saw this over and over again on Twitter. The little, I'm sure y'all guys may have seen it, a little snippet from Yes Minister regarding how they would deal with a situation. Say, well, you know, everything's okay. There's, you know, deny that there's a problem, and then, well, there may be a problem, but you know, if there is, then we'll deal with it. And then the next level is, well, there is a problem, but there's nothing we can do about it. And then the fourth stage is, well, there was a problem, we were able to deal with it, but it's too late now. It's just like, yeah, that's pretty much the case.
Accurate.
Very accurate. And of course, it was done so much better than what I did. Yes Minister was such a great show.
Yes, it was.
God, I want to watch it again. I need to find out who's got it right now, since I have time to watch it.
Yeah, I have a lot more time now that I have no commute.
Yeah, really.
I forgot how much time I was wasting in the car. Jeez.
Oh, yeah.
I think it's on Netflix.
Okay.
Yeah, while you're on Netflix, Lock and Key, man, it's really just surprised me. It's been really, really good.
Cool.
Which one is that?
Lock and Key.
Oh, Lock and Key, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That has been good.
Okay, how about you, Les?
I've taken a couple of movies in. I watched a documentary, I believe it was on Netflix, about, I think the name of it is King Snake, about a man in Oklahoma who runs a snake farm, not a snake farm, a zoo just off I-35. And in the zoo, he has lions and tigers, snakes.
Oh, my.
Some birds. And it's a 7-part series. And at the end of the first part, during which he has been talking about his organization and his competitor that is blasting him constantly, plus a couple of other competitors that are siding with him, it comes down to him being in jail. And he's saying that he did not do what they said he did. So there's the hook to take you through the rest of the series. And the thought is that he murdered or had a competitor murdered. So you have to actually watch the entire to see how this comes about.
Well, that took a turn.
It's
It is.
fascinating. It is fascinating stuff.
So is this like a movie or is it like a reality kind of thing?
It's a documentary.
Wow.
It's a 7-part documentary. And you sit there and you go, well, he's right. And then the competitors say something, well, no, he's right. Then those that join in with him, well, they're right. And it just goes round and round, and they have not shown what's going to transpire. It doesn't tell you, but it is very recent that this happened. So it's fascinating. It's about the guy's name is Joe Exotica, and he is the owner of the zoo up in Wynnewood, Oklahoma. And that's a place we've passed several times to go to Oklahoma City. It just one of these times, and now I want to go see it. I want to see what happened. Also took in Spencer Confidential, a movie with Mark Wahlberg as a policeman that is framed, spends 5 years in prison, gets out, and he's trying to solve a crime. Plus, to find out why they put him in jail. It's great. It's great stuff. The third one, I'm sorry to say, I watched a movie called Zombievers. Zombievers.
I've seen that.
And at the end, did you watch the credits by chance?
Probably,
where they said,
but it was not.
Where they said no animals were harmed in this picture, except for the bear who got a purple nurple, and in parentheses said he deserved it. It's lame, but it's funny as can be.
Yeah, it's hilarious. It is not a great movie by any stretch, but yeah, it was funny.
Oh, so it's Les's type of film.
It's my kind of film, yes. But it also gave the ending a Night of the Living Dead ending. So.
Ooh, okay. Well, for me, yeah, I've been working from home as well, and been doing some binge watching on Twitch. Just some of the games. A couple of new games came out. Doom Eternal, which looks awesome, but it just, oh my god, I can see people having epileptic seizures on some of it, and but it looked great. And another one called Animal Crossing, which I caught a little bit of that, and I'm going, okay.
Yeah, there's a lot of hype around that one.
There is.
I don't know if it's deserved or not because I haven't seen any of it, but
what I've seen of it, no.
Yeah. I watched maybe a minute, and I mean it's animated little animals, and then they're talking like it's tape recorder going and fast forward. So like, oh god, is that the whole goddamn game? Oh god, I can't do that.
Mm-mm. It's like daily missions and stuff you have to do. So it's kind of like a Tamagotchi from hell. You have, like today they were talking, they got turnips, and it's looking at what I've seen, it looks like a bad mobile game. And it's supposed to be for the Switch, right?
I don't know. Don't get me to lie.
It's like, wow. No. And, I'm all for animals and cute and that kind of stuff, but maybe I just haven't seen enough of it or I don't get it either.
Yeah. I picked up some additional reading. One of the books I've been looking forward to for a long time because I've read bits and pieces of it. It's a hardcover trade called Mr. Miracle by Steve Englehart and Steve Gerber. And this collects Brave and Bold 112, 128, 138, and then Mr. Miracle's 19 through 25. And this is kind of the late 70s run where Steve Englehart and Marshall Rogers were the creative team on the book. And I love Marshall Rogers' art.
Yeah.
The two of them on Detective Comics there for a while was just incredible. But they also did Mr. Miracle, and then when they rotated off, it was Steve Gerber and Michael Golden, which no slouches either. So it's been kind of nice reading some of those again. And then of course the Brave and Bold art by Jim Aparo. So the art has been just spectacular through the whole book.
Cool.
Yeah. I won't say much about the Bob Haney stories because I've talked about Bob Haney before, so But before we get into this week's discussion, normally if you're a long-time listener, you at this portion of the show we usually talk about our meetups, and obviously we didn't do one for March. We're not going to do one from April, more than likely, because the way things are going. So hopefully we'll do one. Hopefully things will be well enough that we might do something in May. So we're hoping for May, probably June. Just depends on how things are going. But I'm missing hanging out with you guys and having some great conversations. But there's more important things than that right now. So, but I did want to mention that, we're probably not going to have one for April as well. So, for this week, we are doing things a little bit different. I actually asked Mike to be kind of the moderator of this week's discussion.
I think he just wants to see if anybody can handle the job at this point. Because
moderator or referee?
It's a hard one.
Yeah.
Yeah, no kidding. Honestly, just goalie sometimes.
So, with that, I'm going to turn things over to Mike.
Dad, it's on me for a change. All right. So a month ago, something happened, and given that we bill ourselves as a comics podcast, we figured we should probably talk about it. So about a month ago, I believe it was the 21st.
Sounds about right.
Word came down. That's February 21st, 2020. If we haven't given you enough context clues for the weirdness of 2020. But anyway, February 21st, Dan DiDio announced that he had left DC, or I say that. It was announced via a handful of different comics news sources that Dan DiDio was no longer the publisher at DC Comics. At the time, not a lot of information was handed out. And honestly, that hasn't changed much in the last 30 days. But so what we thought we would do is kind of take a look back at kind of, I hesitate to use the word legacy, but to at least kind of talk about his contributions to the comics world in the last 10 years, and specifically DC where we can. And I will just off the bat start off by saying I not being someone who follows the big two a whole lot. I knew Dan DiDio's name, and I knew he'd been around since about 2010. I've been paying that much attention. There's not a lot. I didn't find a lot on him personally. Not personally. I'm not stalking the guy or anything. But I didn't even find that much about his professional career online. There's a little bit. I mean, for the most part, he's known for being the publisher at DC Comics. There's not a lot. I mean, he had published a few stories in DC Books before that for several years. I want to say his first credited one that I found was like 2002. Before that, he apparently worked as an editor in animation. I'm a little fuzzy on how he got the DC gig, to be honest. Does anybody know?
That I don't know. I know he was a story editor and did write for the animated series Reboot. That's what he's best known for. How
he goes from that to vice president in charge of editorial for DC Comics. I mean, arguably the biggest comic book publisher in, I don't want to say the world, but at least in the United States. It seems like a leap to me. I'm not sure what went down there.
I have no idea.
I mean,
I think from what I'm seeing, he started off as vice president editorial.
Yeah, but still, that's a pretty big jump from a story editor for an animated series to be vice president editorial of a major publisher. That's
right. I mean, who did he know, and how? I mean, obviously there was some sort of interview process there. At least you think there was. He clearly impressed somebody. I don't know. There's just not a whole lot of, like I said, there's not a whole lot of detail on his career online. I mean, I didn't find a website of his own, to be honest. If there is one, it's fairly well concealed.
Well, if I may, when he was on Reboot, he worked with Len Wein and Marv Wolfman.
Oh.
And then in the subsequent series he did, Shadow Raiders, he worked with Len Wein again. So that may have been a stepping stone for him.
Right. At least part of his in.
Yes.
That makes sense. I knew there had to be something like that, but man, I just couldn't find anything about it.
Yeah, you have to know somebody. I understand that, to step forward.
For that big title, yeah.
Yeah, that's a hell of a promotion to take, that's for sure. I mean, good on him.
Obviously, he was doing similar stuff as an editor on those two TV series.
Yeah.
And now he brought forth that knowledge into DC.
But it is, you have to admit that's a little unusual, because I mean, even like Paul Evans, who was publisher at one point, he started out as a writer for DC Comics and moved up the chain. So yeah, I agree. It seems a little unusual, but yeah, like you said, good on him.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's unusual. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. Not by any means.
Right.
But yeah, it's an interesting beginning for sure.
And he also wrote the weekly column DC Nation.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, but even that's after they hired him.
Right.
It's not like, I mean, it just seemed weird that he hadn't done anything comics related, or if he had, it again is not being broadcast in any way.
Yeah.
But anyway, I feel like I'm taking this in a negative direction already. That's not good. Like I said, he had a hell of a run as publisher at DC.
Yeah.
Let's see, what are some of his notable stuff? What's notable about his run?
In the time that he was there,
Yeah.
we had Rebirth, we had the New 52, and all of that happened under his, I don't want to say fist, under his rule.
Yeah, that makes it sound bad, doesn't it?
Mm.
And I know he hated Nightwing.
Now,
Totally hated
do we
Nightwing.
know that, or are we just assuming that?
He's flat out said he did not like Nightwing. He even wanted to kill him off in what was it, Infinite Wars?
It was Infinite Crisis, yeah.
Infinite Crisis. Yeah, and all of DC was like, dude, don't do it. Yeah. You're gonna piss Gail off. She can't see Nightwing, but yeah. But then there was another story where that was what he wanted too. He wanted Nightwing dead. And then with the new 5G that they're talking about coming up, Nightwing was one of the ones that would have been killed off and canceled. He definitely had a thing for Nightwing.
Yeah, but I mean, he's not even Nightwing right now because was it Rick Grayson?
Yeah, something weird like that. Which, part of his ideal for 5G, I don't know if we wanted to talk about or get in too deep on 5G, but I can understand part of his reasoning, but Dido went on the book several times claiming he doesn't really care about our legacy characters, which is weird for the editor of DC to be like, kill them, I think his point was made that even if you kill them, they'll come back, so, Totally forgot where I was going with this.
Okay, let's back up just a tiny bit then. For those of us who are not paying a huge amount of attention to DC Comics, what is 5G?
5G is the 5th generation. This will be, actually, their plan for 5G is that the young generation of DC now basically will take over. They will kill off Bruce Wayne. They'll kill off Diana. They'll kill off Clark Kent. They'll kill off John Stewart. They'll kill off maybe Cyborg. That's still on there. They're going to change Nightwing. We're going to have new Robins and more legacy characters. So that was the changes for 5G. Also, Casey would become the new Wonder Woman in 5G. And she would not be the same Casey that we're seeing in Young Justice right now. They want to make her more of a Faith kind of character. The plus size, which, hey, that's cool. But one direction they're also kicking around with is to make Wonder Woman a man. I don't know how I feel about that one just quite yet. But Bruce Wayne will actually be Luke Fox and Lucius's son, instead of becoming, what is he like? Isn't he Nightwing right now? Batwing. And that Captain Cold's son is going to become Flash. And that all of our books that we're reading right now are going to end. Just totally end. Either the character will die or the series will just end. His plan for 5G was to only have 5G. You could no longer pick up a Batman book with Bruce Wayne in it. That was his plan going forward. A full-blown reboot. All the legacy characters would be changed. They would be a little different going on, a little bit more edgy going forward. But Wally would no longer be Flash. Bruce Wayne will no longer be Batman. Wally will no longer be Flash. They won't even write those books. Which there's two problems with that.
Is this where the editorial part starts?
Right.
Is this where the editorializing starts?
No, this is kind of what caused the upset there at the end. Because at the end, when this was pitched as 5G, AT&T and Warner Brothers, who own DC, was kind of like, hey, yeah, we like that. You can give us some new people, and we can make movies on that. Better yet, why don't we get Abrams and Gunn to come in and write a graphic novel, and we can do movies off that. Who better than the people making the movies right now? So they were getting really excited about this, But that's when Dan stepped in and said, no, I want this, not this Batman and this Batman. Going forward, Luke Fox will be the only Batman. Well, that's when AT&T went, wait a minute, we have a multi-million-dollar movie about to come out with Bruce Wayne as Batman. When people go see that, they're going to go and want to read a comic book about Bruce Wayne as Batman, not Luke Fox. They don't even know who he is. So AT&T was kind of like, I don't know. I don't know about this. And after the big, once again, we have to mention it on the show, after the big upset with Batwing, he was already in hot water with them. You took one of our good, wholesome legacy guys, basically DC's cash cow, and you smudged him. You put a blemish on him that is going to be hard for us to get back on. So he was already, kind of, they had his eye on him. But then, there was 2 other top heads that were fired before he was. So they were definitely moving some things around. So I won't say that Batwing and 5G by themselves was what was decided to let him go. But I think just you put them together and it was too much for them.
So when was this new Coke bullshit getting ready to start? Was this going to be this summer this is going to start?
No, see, they were talking about December. But once they fired him, they've moved it up to June.
Moved it up.
Because that's always a good thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
Right. That's called doubling down, boys and girls.
Yep. But here's where this is rumor. I will say this is the rumor part.
Now we're in the rumors. Do we wait? Do we want to talk facts about this guy before we get into too many rumors?
Well, this kind of goes into the 5G thing.
Fine.
Okay. Yeah. Now,
where did you lose control?
Oh no, I could exercise it. I could totally exercise, but let's let it get out of our system real quick here.
Now I will put a warning out there. I watch a lot of drama channels and that kind of thing, whether it's the comic book world or the makeup world. I watch a lot of drama. Some of this did come from some of my drama channels, different sources, and the stories are there's 2 different stories, and this part of the story is what remains the same. 5G was supposed to be kicked off with Scott Snyder's metal that he's writing right now. What is it called again?
Death metal.
Death metal. He wanted to use that to kick this off. And Scott Snyder was kind of like, no, I've already told you, I don't want to write for any of the 5G. I don't like what you're doing there. You're changing a lot of legacy characters. I don't want my book anywhere near this shit, is pretty much what Scott said. And Death Metal is supposed to be released on the Black Label. It's always been that way. It was pitched that way. It was pitched to be a standalone, and now they're wanting to change it into, we're going to kick our 5G off with this, and we're going to make this spin-off. And so Snyder was basically like, no, no. And this ain't going to happen. Now, granted, Scott will say that when you work with people, you can have arguments with them. Pretty heated arguments is the term he used. Heated arguments, and still like them and work with them. And just because you don't agree on one opinion didn't mean that he didn't like him or wanted him to get fired, But my understanding was that Scott Snyder did go over to AT&T and not tell them, hey, he needs to go, but basically leave my book the fuck alone. I've signed for this. We have contracts on this. This is not what you told me was going to happen here. This is not what's going to happen here. Leave it alone. It's done. Leave it alone. That Friday, Ditto is asked to leave the offices. He was escorted out of his office. Not like, you have to leave right now, but, he was fired on the spot. Jim Lee didn't even find out. Now, that was Friday. Jim Lee didn't even find out that he was fired until Saturday evening, after he read it on, news tabloids, and finally called in, was like, what? What? I've been doing my podcast and drawing and writing. I've missed all of this. So whatever happened there, which neither side won't really say, whatever happened there was quick enough for them to make the decision on the spot that day and not even tell the co-editor what they were doing that day. So, but it all was because
that's not super unusual in that situation. To get when you're getting fired or laid off, they're not. I mean, often it is building for a while.
Yeah.
I mean, you even hinted at that before, but it's not unusual for them to not talk about it until after it happens. And so if it happened late Friday, then I could easily see them not. I mean, they probably could. Should they have contacted Jim Lee? Sure.
Yeah.
But I could see them not doing so too.
Well, they should have, because this almost puts another hat on him until they replace him.
Well, somebody has to pick up the slack for sure.
Right.
Whether it's Lee or not, who knows?
It's kind of like you shoot Trump. Pence can't go, I'm just going to stay VP until you get somebody else. He's got to step up and be president, So I kind of see that as where Jim Lee's stuck with.
This is not as clear-cut a line of succession as the presidency, but yeah.
Yeah.
Fine.
But when you share a title with someone and the other person's not there.
It depends. I think, like you said, I think this stems from a healthy sense of drama, and
yeah,
we may never really know.
But until both sides, because even if he tells his side, AT&T and Warner Brothers is going to have their side.
I'm sure he's in some way legally obligated not to tell his side at this point, and that who knows how long that lasts. But
yeah.
Because clearly the departure appears to not have been mutual. So poor guy got fired. Let's kind of
Yep. But would you guys have liked a full-blown DC?
Blowing it up like that?
The AT&T, when they were first pitched the 5G was supposed to be like an alternate universe. That way you still have Earth 2. I think that's what we're in right now is Earth 2. You'd still have Earth 2 with Batman, Bruce Wayne Batman and that kind of thing. But then you'd kind of have this alternate. So that way they could still push Batman, but you could still push the new Batman to the younger generation who are,
Yeah, I think this is another episode.
Yeah.
I think that question is another episode. Maybe 6 months down the line. Let's see what happens, if anything, with 5G before we start getting too far down the speculation road.
Right.
Or what we want to see. Because it just gets, we're just blowing this out of control at this point if we do that. If we get on that road.
Right.
Let's focus on Mr. DiDio here. So let's backtrack before Batwang. We'll work backwards since we're kind of stuck. Well, if we're talking, if we think that's, if not the first nail in the coffin, at least a significant one. Can we go back as far as Rebirth? This was how much of this was his baby?
As editor, you pretty much got your finger in everything that's going on. It's got to go through you. Your storylines and that kind of thing.
And the whole purpose of Rebirth was to go ahead.
Do a reboot.
Yeah.
Of the DC characters. And although their competitor does not use that term for their use, yeah. And when Thomas and I saw Jim Lee and Dan DiDio in a conference with shop owners several years ago, just before Rebirth began, they both made the statement that the New 52 was a mistake.
Mm-hmm.
And I personally applauded them for stepping forward and saying that. And Rebirth was
It was a course correction.
Yes, and I think they accomplished it. I think they really did well with it.
What I kind of saw Rebirth as is after you have Batman who's been around for, 80 years now, once you tell so many stories with Batman, keeping what's the proper term? Continuity? Continuity. There you go. Keeping it together is kind of hard. You can't have him do something when you're like, oh, but that goes against what he said in Court of Owls, or, oh, but that's not what he said in, The Long Halloween, or, after a while, when you've put 80 years into it, it's kind of like, well, we can't have him do this because he's already done all of this. So once you reboot it, it kind of gave him a clean slate to where we don't have to worry about the Court of Owls anymore. We don't have to worry about, all this other stuff, or him being a robot, or, any of that. Here we go. Let's start over. Basic story. Batman's parents died. Go from there. That, to me, that's what Rebirth was supposed to be. We're giving you, you still got the background of this guy, but he's fresh. You can do another Court of Owls if you wanted to, or,
Well, that was actually what the New 52 was for. It was supposed to be a new start everything over. Then Rebirth, because if anything, Rebirth brought back a lot of stuff that was
they screwed up in 52.
prior New 52.
Yeah.
And here's the thing, because I'm pretty sure we talked about this before regarding continuity. I'm on the fence about this. I understand when there's times where they'll say something and go, well, that's not, that kind of contradicts something that's done before. But here's the thing: when I was a kid growing up, and Les, I'm sure you were kind of the same way. You could be reading a Batman comic, and I used something a similar example before, and here he is, he's tied up, he's about to be some incredible trap by the Joker, and to be continued. And then you pick up Detective Comics, it's a totally different situation. He's battling someone else, and it's like, well, which one comes before first? I never thought about that at the time.
Yeah.
I never thought about how this was in continuity. I didn't care. I was reading. I was enjoying the stories. I don't know at what point that changed. It kind of changed to a degree for me, but it's like, you don't have to worry about that. I mean, why is this such an issue now?
See, and of all the big publishers, I've always kind of gotten the feeling that DC is the one that wasn't as worried about continuity. I mean, and I may be biased here. I mean, Marvel always seemed to care more about it. It always seemed to be a little more important. But then again, they only had a handful of characters that they did the multiple titles at the same time for. I mean, in the 90s, you got Wolverine, and Punisher had, as many as 4 or 5 titles at a time, because they were ridiculous that way, because it was the 90s. But otherwise, it was they were mostly staying with a main storyline for each. And I never kind of got that feeling from DC. It seemed like a lot of stuff was sort of just different stories told at different times about the same characters. And it didn't, I never got the feeling that they were super concerned about it. I find myself wondering if it's the fandom that kind of took it out of control a little bit in that regard.
I think so. I really do. And I know that Dan, I feel so personal calling him Dan because I keep screwing up his last name now. He was the one who always pushed for the younger guys. But if we're going to use these younger guys, it means these other guys have got to get older. And that's when we started seeing the older Superman, the older Batman, And hey, that's all fine and good. But to me, when you
Careful.
almost okay,
Careful.
when you age a character like that, it takes it out of the fantasy. You know, Batman's not supposed to age. I mean, yeah, he's supposed to age because he's just a human and everything else, but he's not supposed to age. He's, you know, and like Peter Parker, he will forever stay a kid for Marvel. I don't know, maybe something in the Spider made him stay young, or, you know, they could really easily explain all of that and everything else. There was no really need to push them to get older. You know, I mean, I see it all the time on my soap operas. Girl has a baby one day, and then 2 weeks later, it's like, boom, here's this teenager. You know, the mom doesn't look, you know, 16 years older, but the kid does. You know, they could handle it that way too. That should be part of their superpowers. They don't age. You know, Superman, he's an alien. He shouldn't age. So for the push of that, it kind of, anytime you mess with somebody like Batman, just saying his name, don't you already have a picture of what he looks like? You know, it's just, he's Batman. He's not 40, he's not 20, he's not 80, he's not 5, he's Batman, you know? Why does it matter if Tim has to grow older, Dick gets older, or who the hell cares? He's still Batman. You know, but Dan couldn't get over that. No. You know, he took Robin in, and Robin was 5, and now he's 20, and he's this guy. You know, this means Batman should at least be 20 years older. And why? Are we writing fiction, or, you know, what? Why? Why does it have to make sense? Why? Isn't that part of the fun of a comic book sometimes, is it doesn't always make sense? You know, yeah, Batman stays 30. We don't know why, but does that keep you up at night not knowing why? You know? But I do think it was the fandom.
It will now.
Yeah. I do think it was the fandom, though, that was kind of like, no, wait a minute. You know, if Tim is this old and, you know, Batman, people want to put an age to it. But I also think that most of those people who want Batman to age are not the ones reading Batman, you know. They just want it to be correct and make sense. And it's a comic book. It shouldn't make sense. It doesn't have to make sense. We're not writing history books. We're writing comic books, you know.
Well, I guess I'm one of them then.
That what? That they should age, or?
I don't have a problem with them aging, and I do want to say something that you talking about Peter Parker saying a teenager. Mm-hmm. We witnessed him graduate high school. We saw him go to college. We saw him go to graduate school. We saw him got married. I enjoyed reading those stories.
Yep.
You know, so yeah, they did get older.
But now he's at that age that he won't get older. He's in his 30s, and he won't get older.
Yeah, but there was the whole mentality of him. You know, they wanted to age them back to a teenager. I'm like, why? I mean, if you look at anything else that's come out, especially like any other kind of multimedia or stuff, he's a teenager.
Yeah. Well,
and
part of my
do you know why? I can tell you why.
Well, I know why, but go ahead and say it anyway.
To appeal to a younger audience.
Yeah.
You're widening because the older folks will, yes, they will probably wah about it a little bit like we're doing right now, but essentially they will continue to buy Spider-Man comics. But if we can also make them younger and make them appeal to a younger generation, then maybe they will also buy Spider-Man comics. And I don't know that this practice has ever really proved to work, but they keep doing it.
No, it hadn't. Just like the whole fallacy of, hey, if we do the movies, then that's going to bring in new readers. It does not happen. It has
not generally done so.
It doesn't.
Right?
It's not happened. So, you know, let's just go ahead and drop that. And I get that, but the people, who enjoy Peter Parker at 30 also was reading them when he was 19 and when he was in his mid-20s.
Right.
They grew up with them too. So, I mean, I get that. I understand, and I understand the whole appeal of trying to get new readers. I totally understand that, but, you know, I never read Adventures of Batman when he was a teenager. So, you know. So,
I don't really see it as an appeal to younger readers, but like
Well,
Spider-Man.
that's because you're not a younger reader.
Right. Well, even when I was, though, think about it. When you're writing a story and you have a guy who's, just example, okay? You have a teenager going, oh, I'm going to eat a Tide Pod. Ha ha, this is funny. It's easy to do because they're a kid. They don't know any better. You put 30-year-old Spider-Man, he's like, you're fucking stupid. Don't eat a Tide Pod. You know, you're going to kill yourself. Do you know what's in that thing? So you can pull off more of the being naive and learning your powers and learning your strengths and learning your boundaries as a teenager. But as an adult, you better have that shit figured out. You've now got mortgage and bills and you know what I'm saying? So for Spider-Man,
actually, that does make a lot of sense in a way.
It was easier for him to get in the zany predicaments because he was a kid, you know. He didn't know any better. So even as an older person, we can identify to that. I remember being young and stupid, you know, and now throw a spider bite and I can swing from buildings. Oh, wow. I would have been in a lot of trouble.
well, you say that about the responsibilities and then him being a kid. That was one of the things that got Marvel off, you know, launched them, was the fact that there was real world problems. Yeah, I mean, yeah, he was doing crazy stuff. He was trying to learn his powers and all that, but he was bullied at school because he was the nerd. He was essentially the breadwinner because Ben had been murdered, and he was always worried about Aunt May possibly dying at any second.
Yeah, and take care of her.
And then of course the many loves that he had, or crushes that he had. So I mean, it was kind of best of both worlds.
Yeah.
And that was the thing that made Marvel really popular when it first started up, as opposed to DC, because they didn't have those problems. You know, the worst problems they had, other than battling the bad guys, is the love interests. You know, hopefully not learning their secret identity and that kind of thing. Yeah.
Or find a little friend in the refrigerator. Yeah.
Okay.
So
okay.
To me, that's why I feel.
Let's get back to Dan.
Okay, Dan DiDio. We're here to talk about Dan DiDio, for crying out loud.
Right. Well, that was from where, like I said, he was the one who pushed them to age these people. You know,
there you go.
That would be
nice tie back. That was good.
Yeah. So, I do think that I hate to say this, but like the Batman line where he had amnesia and we had Captain Gordon running around in the bat suit and da-da-da-da-da, I didn't like it. I really didn't like it. You know,
So this is referring back to the New 52 again.
Yeah, I guess that was 52, wasn't it?
Somewhere in that time frame, anyway.
Yeah.
Okay, so now let me, just since I'm a little fuzzy on dates, the New 52 was also within Dan DiDio's reign of terror, as we may end up calling it before this is over. Right? Am I right?
Right.
Am I right?
It was, yeah.
So how much of that was, I hesitate to make it sound so dramatic as how much of that was his fault, but because I know there had to have been given the way all that worked, there had to be a team of people working on it. But he's still the guy with the where the buck stops, essentially.
Mm-hmm. He's the guy who takes it to AT&T and Warner Brothers and goes, "Look, this is what we're doing."
Well,
so
now,
it's
yes.
Right. Well, not now.
Well, not now, right? But at near the end, around the end, yes.
Yeah. Because they can't do anything that would interfere with, you know, what they're trying to do with their games and movies and that kind of thing. So
Yeah,
I
and
would say that the editor has a lot of things because my understanding, I could be wrong about this and correct me if I'm wrong. Tom Taylor wants to do a Batman story. Okay, he's got to go in there to Dan and say, hey, I want to do a Batman story, and this is what I want to do it about. I want to make him fall in love. I want to make him get married. I want to make Alfred die. You know, I'm not saying that was all Tom Taylor, and I think that was King. Yeah. But Dan's the guy who has to go, I like it. Let's do it. Or, you know what? I like that, but let's take this out and let's do this instead. He's the guy who makes that call.
is he? Really?
That's what I
I'm
assumed.
betting there's an entire list of people between him and Tom Taylor. I'm betting.
Or there wasn't a list between him and Snyder.
That may or may not be the case, but I also think that there may be some individual specific
Like the actual editors?
exceptions to this rule. But there's
the actual editors.
There's a fleet. I say fleet. There's a significant number of people who that's actually their job, is to kind of rein. I almost hate to put it this way, but kind of rein writers in. You want your writers to come up with new and interesting ideas, and each of those writers has an editor whose job it is to tell them, okay, you can kind of get away with this to an extent, but you kind of need to rein this in. And if you want to go a little more nuts with this, you can. And all of that happens before anything gets to Dan DiDio's desk. I think, but with something like the New 52, that's a large enough scale thing that, yes, I think a publisher level person has more influence over it, more control over what's actually happening through the editors. Now the question becomes how if New 52 went wrong, have we heard? I mean, this is many years later, of course, but I mean, what was the big problem?
For me, was Lobo.
What was the real big problem? Tom, what was the big problem?
I think, with the New 52, they did exactly what we were talking about earlier. They were trying to make it more accessible for new readers. And the problem is they chased off the old readers, which to a degree I can understand. But the thing is they weren't really bringing in the new readers. And I'm not sure exactly, because it wasn't all bad. And I've said this from the get-go. I enjoyed some of the New 52, some of it I didn't. The stuff that was before then, some of it I enjoyed, some of it I didn't. Just some of it it just fell flat. I mean, when you alienate a bunch of your old steady readers and you don't bring in the new readers, then there's problems.
Yeah.
So essentially, he went too far.
I think so.
He new coked it even further.
He did.
Or he started off
really
by
did.
new coking it, and then here at the end he was trying to new coke it again. And they were like, the big bosses were like, there ain't no way.
There was only supposed to be 52 titles. New 52. There was only supposed to be 52 titles, and they severely got off that. I think before that all ended, they quit calling it the 52 because at that point there was 200 titles going on. So even when they tried to rein themselves back, they didn't rein themselves back, and they went crazy again and changed it all up.
Oh, my guess is they realized that if they slashed out 2/3 of the titles that they had going on, that they would lose a whole lot of revenue, and the big bosses said, get some more titles out there quickly.
Well, and not only that, you had Green Arrow. They turned him into the most whiniest, self-righteous little privileged brat there ever was. I mean, it was he was so broody, and by the end of the series, when they brought him home in body bags, I was like, thank God he's not going to be whiny and pissy anymore. I shouldn't root for my character to die because they made him so bad, you know? Yes, to a certain point, you know, Green Arrow always is kind of broody, but not to the point of just emo. You know, and that's pretty much what it was an emo Green Arrow.
But how is that Dan DiDio's fault?
That was his watch.
He didn't write the book. He was not
approved
the editor. He was the publisher.
Yeah.
He hired the guy who approved it.
Yeah.
Which is a pretty big leap.
So
I mean, but yeah. Okay. And in all fairness, that's an example, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
But there were several characters he did that way, or they did that way.
That's what I mean.
That was also, for me, the beginning of the change of Harley that I didn't like. I love Jimmy and Amanda. They're a great team. But I think with Harley, they pushed her too hard to become what we were seeing in movies and stuff than what Harley was. And that, with the new 52, she totally changed over. Blonde hair, red tips, blue tip, you know, Harley Quinn costume gone. So it was kind of like the core things that people liked about these people totally changed with 52. Lobo was no longer the dirty biker. He was the pretty boy, you know. It was just weird. It was weird.
Change
so
for
I
the
think,
sake of change.
Yeah, and they banked on, people are going to like this. And we didn't. And so even when your older readers are going, man, you took the guy that I liked. You took Batman and made me hate Batman. You cheered, I cheered for Green Arrow to die. That was what was wrong with 52. It was just bad. It's just bad. To where Rebirth was supposed to be, I think they're saying now what Dr. Manhattan erased everybody's mind, but there's just some things you can't erase.
Don't even start with the whole Watchmen thing, the whole Doomsday Clock. I don't have the mental capacity to handle that.
No.
I think that was a bad idea to begin with, and I never read any of it. But
I do want to step in with one thing that was mentioned earlier, and it amazes me to this day. What the hell does Jim Lee do?
He writes and draws and does his podcast.
Then what the hell does he have a co-publisher
title for? Why is he a publisher?
I don't know.
All this, and I'm not saying this as defending Dan. I like some of the stuff he did. I questioned some of the stuff he did. I hated some of the stuff he did. But it was all directed at Dan. It's like Jim Lee has done a fucking thing.
Right. What's he
last
doing?
10 years than just draw.
Yeah.
I'm like, and now he's going to have to face this. He is gone. Dan is gone, so Jim's going to have to deal with whatever shit that comes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I wonder.
Remind me of the guy that'll do that. So although he's saying right now that position is not going to be filled anytime soon, I think once he realizes that, hey, you're going to have to do what he wasn't going to do, and he's going to push for that position to be filled soon.
My guess is that there's already somebody else doing it. They're just doing it without that publisher title. Because if Jim Lee really hasn't had anything to do with it, which I'm not 100% sure I believe entirely, then he's certainly not doing it now. And somebody else is.
Yep.
Who that is, we don't know, and we may not really ever know. I mean, it's possible they keep it on the down low the whole time. That's doable.
And I'm not saying that he's not done anything. I'm just questioning, because whenever anything happens, especially if any shit hits the fan, who is front and center talking about it? It's not Jim.
It's him.
Dan.
And he's usually the one that refers them to Dan. I don't know about that. Kind of like Aspiring. Well, I didn't know till Saturday.
I was only following orders. That kind of thing. So yeah, that's the thing that's been really kind of eating me for the last several years. Because I'm watching all this venom online go toward Dan, and these people that are so pissed at Dan turn and kiss Jim Lee's ass, and I was like, he's a co-publisher too. Why aren't you complaining to him about what's going on with your favorite character?
Yeah, how do you know he didn't have anything to do with it?
Because he's talented, and they see his pretty pictures, and that's all that matters.
Dan's a good writer.
Mm-hmm.
Dan is a good writer too, so he's got talent too.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
There's a difference, though.
Mm.
DiDio was named Vice President Editorial in 2002.
Right.
He was promoted to Vice President Executive Editor in 2004. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And in 2010, he was named co-publisher along with Jim Lee.
Mm-hmm.
Jim Lee was not an editor. Jim Lee was not an editor in any position. He was an artist. He was a writer.
Mm-hmm.
He was a publisher. He mainly got his drive because of Image Comics.
Of his characters, Wildstorm line. Yeah.
That's right. So that is why Dan was in front of the people. He was the editor, not Jim Lee. You've got to look at that.
Well, isn't part of your job as isn't part of your job as an editor to protect your talent? And with Jim Lee being the talent,
Lee was not an editor.
Yeah.
But he was a publisher of his own line of comics, and then now the co-publisher of one of the two biggest. And he's not doing anything except for hey, here's a drawing here, or here's a drawing there, and hey, this is going to be great. Right. Dan will answer all your questions.
And if he's essentially doing what a publisher, if he's essentially having all or a lot of the artists reporting to him in the same way that DiDio would have the editors reporting to him, I could sort of see that working. It's a different job that way, I grant you, and I think that may explain a few things if it's the case. But I don't know that we have any evidence that that's really what's happening.
Right.
It would make sense, but that doesn't mean anything. Hell, nothing makes sense anymore. Black is white, up is down. We're all in fucking lockdown, for crying out loud.
Right.
For a beer.
But anyway, don't start that. I don't even want to go there.
That's when you get one of those delivery services to bring you the beer.
Yeah. They can do that now.
And Les says this from experience. But anyway.
Yes, I do.
I think maybe Dan did get a lot of the grunt of things when things went bad with 52, and that everything else that's gone bad. That's part of your job, though.
Right, and I think some of it he took on himself as well. I think he had to have. But to me, I honestly think, like, with this 5G thing, I think it was planned out. He had a big ideal in planning it out. He may not have knew this one's going to write this one and this one's going to write this one, but he knew what was going to happen. He hadn't worked his talent out yet, but he knew the direction he wanted to take it in. And I think when you combined that once again he was messing with the legacy and, with the other strikes that he had before, I think AT&T at that point was like, man, we're going to have to cut it here because we're no longer seeing eye to eye. Well, but then they're going to put it out anyway, or at least some variation on it, and they're going to do it a lot faster, which honestly, if you're going to put something out in June, this is March. That shit's going to press. It's done. Yeah. Whatever's going to start in June is done. Yeah. Plain and simple.
Has to be done.
Yeah, has to be. Because it takes that long to turn around the print work. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I'm a little confused on all that, but anyway. And one of the other things about 5G, though, they're talking about a price point at $7.99. Okay.
It'll either be a larger page count or a larger page.
We'll see.
Like the Black Label
It's going to
was.
have to be.
Yeah.
If they
gonna
want
have to be.
if they want to sell it, it will have to be. But yeah,
Yeah.
that's again, yeah,
Well, we'll just wait and see.
yeah. We'll when we see what's going on, we may talk about it again. But in the meantime, obviously, Dan DiDio, in his career in DC, did some good things and he did some not so good things. And it will be interesting to see what he turns up doing next.
Mhm.
And it will be interesting to see who turns up doing his job next at DC.
Yeah.
Um,
I think he'll be successful in whatever he does. I mean, you couldn't have stayed at a company that long if everything you did was bad. So
Right.
I don't want to come off like I'm like, oh, he did this, but
well, and I think I think the whole conversation here has been, yeah, some good, some bad. It has been pretty mixed, and
yeah.
that's cool. I mean, he's going to have generated some controversy just being in that position, and
Yep.
he's clearly done some good things because he was in that position a while.
Mhm.
All right, last thoughts.
Last thoughts. Well,
Oh hell.
I hope the rumors we're hearing aren't true. I really do. And I hope that 5G will take off. And, like I said, I hope Dan is successful in whatever he chooses to do next. I know since he's been gone, they've brought talent like Jeff Loeb back and Paul Dini. So I don't know. I'm kind of curious to see where this is going to leave DC now too. I think there was a hasty decision that was made. I don't think either side really thought about it, and now it's kind of like, what do we do? I'm curious on what they're going to do here. But at this point,
I'm sure they are too.
yeah. Well, from all the rumors that are out there, DC's either going to sink or they're going to shoot off and fly. So
God, of course. But they all say that about everything.
Yeah.
Anyway.
yeah. Yeah, like I said, I wish him the best. It wasn't all bad.
Yep, clearly he did some right.
Yep. And for anybody to lose their job in this time right now, my heart goes out to him. So.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
We're not sure, but he could produce some writing for DC. Granted, he's been stripped of his editorial and his publishing, but that doesn't mean he's gone brain dead.
Yeah.
In this world of freelancing.
And I've always said DC's animation department is killing it. So
Oh yeah.
It might be nice to see him go over there and do something for them.
Could be interesting.
I would recommend it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens to him. I mean, he started it in TV. I can see him going back and doing that if he wants to. Anybody who wants to add him as a publisher would be lucky to have him. I mean, as controversial as he was, he still did a real good job. He was still successful. So, I wish him luck as well. I mean, I like him. I like him personally. I've met him. We've talked a little bit. I've liked his writing. And it's funny you talk about the legacy stuff, but some of the stuff that he wrote, he brought back OMAC. He brought back the Challengers of the Unknown. He brought back, he was writing the Metal Men. So he was bringing back some of the older stuff. So he was a fan of the older stuff too. I wish him luck. I don't have any doubt that right now he's just probably sure he's taking it easy, just trying to weigh his options. He'll be fine.
He will. He'll bounce back real good
yeah.
from this.
He won't be without a job.
And the grace that he handled being fired with, he could have gone on social media and totally slammed DC, and he would have had every right because he was upset, you know?
You say
And he
that.
didn't.
He
Well,
might not have been able to do that
well, yeah,
for
but
legal. They may have had legal stuff set up for him not to, but still, yes, he has handled it well
yeah.
so far.
And, like I said, a lot of the stuff I said came from drama channels and that kind of stuff. And it's been very slim. So,
Well, we'll
I
take that
think
as a
that
positive.
both parties wanted to keep this amicable. So I think the fans should too. Although the day he was fired, some of the things that were going on Twitter, it's like, this is just sick, people. Whether you liked what was going on or not, this is a human being,
Yep. All right, so we're all in agreement that he's done some interesting things, and he will probably continue to do some interesting things. So on that positive note, we're going to take a break and come back with weekly picks.
And we're back, and it's time for weekly picks, and leading off this week is Liz.
All right. For my first pick, I'm actually going with the last. I'm picking The Dreaming, number 20 from DC Comics. This is the finale. This is the one that Simon and I can't even say the guy. This is the fight. All of the fate of the dream is going to finally be revealed to us. This has been amazing. This one was actually, I think they did 6 kind of spin-offs from the Sandman universe, and this was the one that really caught my attention. And I'm, like I said, finale. I'll be very curious where this one goes, and can't wait for the trade probably next month.
Oh, probably.
Probably.
Yep, cool.
Yeah.
Good choice.
Alrighty. Next, I believe, is Mike.
Okie dokie. This is kind of an easy one for me. My first pick is from Image Comics, and I'm picking Nailbiter Returns number 1, because I was a huge damn fan of the original Nailbiter series, and I am tickled pink that they're bringing this back. So this is a story, even if you're not familiar with Nailbiter, there is a town in Oregon, a fictional town, of course, which has created more than its fair share of serial killers over the years. The town's called Buckaroo. After all the events of the original series, we are now later having a bunch of copycat murders based on a lot of the killers from Buckaroo. And so Agent Finch is coming back to work on these cases. And it's going to be fun. I'm excited.
Yeah, this was on my radar as well. I enjoyed the original series too, so yeah. I'm glad to see this back.
Me too. I'm curious if they're copycats or if we have more killers.
We'll have to read it and see.
Yep.
To be decided.
Alrighty. I am next, and for my first choice, new series from Dynamite Comics, Nancy Drew and the Hardy Boys, The Death of Nancy Drew. I mean, guess the title kind of tells you all what happens. The story is Frank and Joe are investigating Nancy's death. This happens after she brings down a crime organization. So, is this retaliation? We'll just have to read the book and find out. So,
cool.
This could be fun.
Mm-hmm.
Be interesting.
The last series they did with Nancy and the Hardy Boys was pretty good. So,
yeah,
it'll be interesting.
Definitely. Alrighty, Les.
From Dark Horse Comics comes Spy Island, number 1. This is by the creative team Chelsea Kane and Elise McCall, the people that brought you Man-Eaters. In this title, a spy, Nora Freud, has an assignment on a tropical island. She needs to keep an eye on things, but her problem is the island is at the tip of the Bermuda Triangle. So in this, she's got intrigue, spies, tourists, evil villains, and it'll last for 4 issues. So it'll be concise, and I know that Kane has written some really good novels too, so I'm curious as to how this one goes.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Sounds like fun.
Yeah.
It does.
I really
Definitely
like Man-Eaters too.
Yeah, should be an interesting read, definitely. Alrighty, Liz.
All right. For my second pick, this is actually a series premiere called The Ludocrats. They're calling them the Ludicrous Aristocrats. Newsrama did a really good preview of this one, and they actually show you, I think it's the first 4 or 5 pages of this comic, and it's going to be hilarious. It's kind of one of those, it reminded me of, I hate to keep bringing it up, but I hate Fairyland, to where it's just kind of crazy and gory, and I mean, a guy loses his head within the first 4 panels. So
Awesome. I love it when that happens.
Yeah. So this one should be pretty cool. I'm excited about this one. Image Comics, so should be pretty good and funny in a
Cool.
gross, cute way.
Nice.
Alrighty. Mike, you're up again.
Oh, okay. So my second pick is from Oni Press, and I'm picking a new book, Rogue Planet #1. This is the story of a salvage vessel who is searching for something on okay, the technical term is actually Rogue Planet. It's a planet with no star. It's just sort of floating out in deep space by itself. And it's, spoiler, this is written by Cullen Bunn, so it's not going to go well. I mean, it's going to go deliciously not well, but it's not going to go well for these poor folks on this salvage vessel. So yeah, I'm looking forward to this. It's going to be fun.
That does sound good.
It is.
Yep. Yeah, I'm ready for this one. Should be fun. Okay, I am next, and for my second choice, I'm going with Marvel Comics, and this is a classic story that's been extended. It's called X-Men, God Loves, Man Kills, written by Chris Claremont and art by Brent Anderson. If you've not read this story, you're kind of familiar with this story because this was somewhat of the basis for X2. The switch is in this story, Stryker is a religious leader. So he's basically doing a crusade against mutants, as they are abomination from God. So it's a really great story. When we talked about the Death of Phoenix a few weeks back, we talked about some of the classic great stories. This is equal to them. This is equal to the Death of Phoenix and Days of Future Past, and this is right up there with them. So if you've not read this before, I highly recommend it. And this is actually being split up into 2 issues because it was originally a graphic novel. So, and obviously it's been expanded. So it'd be interesting to see what they've added to this story.
So it's like getting a bonus DVD and a DVD set.
Yeah.
It's like a director's cut, I guess.
It's the Snyder cut.
This is Marvel. That's not a Snyder cut.
Is that a cut at Snyder or a cut at Marvel?
Maybe it's more like the Blade Runner version where they took the voiceover out. I don't know. We'll see. But no, this is a really cool story.
Yeah, I
From
think
back
so.
in the heyday of the X-Men. Should be good.
Yep.
But
Good
yeah,
chance to pick it up.
Yeah, definitely. Alrighty, Les.
For my second choice, and remember, these come out on the 1st of April. My second choice is Year Zero, number 1, put out by Artists, Writers, and Artisans. A couple of weeks ago, I believe Thomas had a title, Resistance. Is that right?
Sounds right.
That was put out by Artists, Writers, and Artisans. Year Zero is about 5 survivors of a global epidemic. In this case, the zombie apocalypse. I have read a couple of the issues for this from the Upshot magazine that the publisher put out a couple months ago. And it's interesting because you take these people, a Japanese hitman, a Mexican street urchin, an Afghan military aide, a polar research scientist, and a Midwestern American survivalist. And this starts out, and you can see that they're going to start coming toward one another to survive, to battle the zombies. So to me, it's really fun to take these 5 people and start merging them together and come up with a solution and a cause and a cure for the zombieism.
Interesting idea.
that is.
Alrighty, and then honorable mention.
All right, for our honorable mention, it's out of DC Comics, and it is Batman Last Night on Earth. This was an amazing story. It was a 3-part miniseries with Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo. Capullo? I can't say it.
Capullo.
Amazing artist. That's what his name should be. I changed it for him. 20 years in the future, Batman wakes up in the Arkham Asylum. He's young and he's sane and he's never been Batman. So, this, like I said, it was a 3-part miniseries and it takes you through pretty much a wasted, they're calling it DC land because we will run into so many characters from DC in this story as Batman tries to piece out, what the hell happened, who did this, why was the world destroyed, and, we may see a few of our favorite villains in there too. Definitely a lot of powerhouse legacy characters in this story. As much shit as I give him, I could not see anybody but Scott Snyder writing the story for this. It was really well put out together. Then when you get Greg to do the artwork, amazing. Definitely have to pick this one up. It's not a real long read, but it will be one that will leave you thinking like, wow, what if there wasn't a Batman, So, Last Night on Earth.
Very nice.
Cool.
All right. Any special shout-outs or mentions this week?
I just do want to say that April 1st is Brienne's birthday, and she's a fan and a listener of the show, so happy birthday.
Yeah.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Happy
Yeah.
birthday.
To be born on April Fool's Day, that has to be something.
Right. When my sister called me, it was like, you're lying. April Fools. Best joke ever, though.
Oh, totally. One other thing we should mention. I kind of wish it was find a better way to do this than to save them for the end. But we had a kind of pretty important celebrity pass recently. Kenny Rogers passed away this past week. And I mean, kind of a legend in music in general. I mean, a lot of what he did was popular with country fans, but he spread over several different, I guess you say, genres of music over his career, and had quite an impact. He'd had some health issues, obviously. He'd been ill for a while, but finally passed away recently.
Yeah,
Okay.
I was very sad to hear that. I had not known that he had been having health issues, but I did enjoy his work. I did love a lot of his music from, especially the late 70s, early 80s. I mean, you heard it all the time. I mean, it was just, if it was not on country, it was on pop radio, definitely. He was definitely a big crossover artist. Since we're kind of talking about that as well, I would be remiss if we didn't acknowledge the passing of Lyle Wagner, who passed away a couple of days earlier at the age of 84 with a short battle with cancer. Best known for being on the Wonder Woman TV series, but I was also on the Carol Burnett show for the entire run, if I'm not mistaken.
Thanks.
And was, well, I almost want to say he was almost Batman, but it was never intended for him to be Batman. If you're familiar with the story, if you're not, I'll go ahead and tell you. When they were working on casting the '60s Batman, they had always wanted Adam West, but they figured they needed to test someone else out. Otherwise, 20th Century Fox would have said, "Well, we need to see some other actors." So they got Lyle Wagner. Lyle Wagner actually auditioned as Bruce Wayne, and if you go to YouTube, you can find some. You can see the actual footage. There's also a little bit of a documentary that was on the box set of the entire collection of them talking about this, and they acknowledged that was, and it's funny and it's kind of painful in a way watching that, because it's the same. You see the same scene with Lyle Wagner, and I, for the life of me, I forgot who was the guy that was playing Robin. And then you're seeing bits and pieces kind of juxtaposed with the Adam West Burt Ward audition, and you could see it's night and day. I mean, Lyle Wagner was playing it extremely straight, almost to the point where it was kind of painful, where Adam kind of had that, this is a joke, I know it's a joke, but I'm going to go ahead and wink at you while I'm saying these lines. And it was just a kind of a different vibe. And so it was like it was fate. They were always destined to play these roles. But he was a nice comedic actor. He was a nice straight actor. And wanted to acknowledge his passing.
Mm-hmm.
Glad you did.
Yep. All
right. We'll move on to our regular shout-outs. First off, want to thank Pop Goes the Culture Podcast Network for allowing us to be part of a great group of podcasts. That they're, starting to have problems talking, and I don't know why, because I hadn't talked that much today. That could be it. I don't know.
Maybe.
Definitely check out the link that we'll have in the show notes. Thank you guys for your support as always. And we also want to thank the Podern family on Twitter for spreading the word of the fellowship. Definitely check out some of their fine work. And the easiest way to do that is to just do a search, hashtag Potter and Family as one word, and just scroll through whatever catches your eye. Just click on that link, download that episode, and hope you have a lot of time. Have a blast listening to the show. Thank you guys, as always. Also want to thank Manny the Martyr for supplying the music to our podcast. Definitely check out their music. We'll have a link in the show notes there. Thank you guys, as always. And finally, you, dear listener, thank you for downloading and listening to today's episode. We always appreciate your support. We also value your feedback. Any kind of questions, comments, suggestions, complaints, observations, what have you, please send them our way. Our email address is email@thefellowshipofthegeeks.net, or you can go to the website and go to the About Us page, and there's a form that you can fill out. It's a contact form, and we'll get that in. Follow us on social media. On Facebook, we are The Fellowship of the Geeks. And on Twitter, we're @Fellowship Geeks. And if you like to follow our personal Twitter accounts, you can do that. Mike can be found @MikeyGeek. Liz can be found @LN_Geek. And I can be found @TomTCGeek. And wherever you download or listen to our podcast, we would greatly appreciate it if you would rate and review us. Thank you. Anything else before we say goodbye?
Just thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Appreciate you listening.
Thanks for listening, friends. Hey, we did a comic book episode. It's been a while since we've done one of those.
Yeah, kind of.
But never fear. The next few episodes are going to be comic book related, so
Woo.
Yay.
Yay.
Until next time, geek on, my friends.
We thank you for listening to the show. Comments, suggestions, and questions can be sent to email@thefellowshipofthegeeks.net. You can follow us on Facebook @The Fellowship of the Geeks and on Twitter @Fellowship Geeks. Until next time,